We finished the halachas of Kedushin, and now we're moving on to halachas of Ksuba. In the booklet that you received has the Kitzur in the beginning, and then it has some things from Kavnoki and some things from Get Mesuder and writing American names from Harav Henkin. Today we're going to start with the beginning of writing a Ksuba, and maybe if we'll have time we'll go also into something in Kavnoki also. I'm not going to go through everything that's written in the Kitzur Nachla Shiva. You have it. Only going to discuss certain months and dates and things like that where there's a difference or where there's an explanation to be discussed. Iyar is, if you look in Kavnoki, when it discusses Iyar in the Kavnoki itself, just give you a background. Kavnoki is a pirush on Seder Haget of Maramri. Maramri wrote a Seder Haget, and he wrote a biur on the Seder Haget called Birkas Hamayim. The Seder Haget was published in the back of the Shulchan Aruch. The biur of Birkas Hamayim was not published so often. Kavnoki is a biur on Seder Haget of Maramri. The Seder Haget of Maramri it's divided into different sections: Get Mi Yad Liyad, Get Mi Al Yidei Shliach, etc., etc. In Seder Get Rishon, part of it discusses how to write a get. Aside from all the instructions, also the nusach of the get and the names of the months and the names of the dates and everything else. When it's regarding Chodesh Iyar, the Kavnoki in its own biur says that in the biur on the Seder Haget, he writes that Iyar, he brings the mocker that Iyar is read with a patach, Iyar, not Iyar. But in Ashlomas Asdarim, which is what the Kavnoki wrote afterwards in additions to the Kavnoki, and over there also he quotes in Tzemach Tzedek things that were published after the first edition of Kavnoki came out. So over there he brings the mocker that you read it with a kamatz, Iyar, not Iyar. Hashlomas Hasdorim. Now, regarding Chodesh Iyar, the opening statement of the Seder Haget, Ois Aleph of Seder Haget, the Seder Get Rishon, Ois Aleph, is that Ein Koisvin Get Be'ir. You don't write a get in Iyar, but in the city of Krakow, they already started writing, there already was a minhag to write a get in Chodesh Iyar. What is the reason why there was an issue with Chodesh Iyar? The Kavnoki in Seif Cotton Daled says that there is a suffix if you write it with one yud or you write it with two yuds. Chodesh Iyar. Bepoyel, the Kavnoki writes, and we write it with two yuds. That's in Seif Cotton Hay. And he brings over there from the book Michtav Melio, which is one of the classical Sfarim on Hilchas Gittin. You don't have that Kavnoki in the booklet. That it's if you write it with one yud, the get is possible unless it's a shas adchak. Why is it important to know when the get is possible, when not? Because you probably saw it already in the Nachlas Shiva, in the Kitzur Nachlas Shiva, in the beginning of Siman Tezvav. Nachlas Shiva says that anything that you write a ksuba, you have to write like you write in a get, because in case it's going to be a shaila, when they write a get on shemas, they should look at the ksuba. And according to that, Nachlas Shiva says l'chayra they should have also used the whole demiskeri and hamechuna, and tzarech why they don't do it. B'poil we don't do it. Demiskeri and hamechuna. So that is regarding what? No, it's possible unless it's a shas adchak. Shas adchak is kosher. That's regarding Chodesh Iyar. Chodesh Av could be called three ways. Chodesh Menachem, Chodesh Av, Chodesh Menachem Av. If you look in Kavnoki, in Siman Kuf Daled, Sifkoten Yud Daled, he starts by saying that the minhag of the people, Noyagim HaSoifrim, that when they write a Ksube or Shtaris, you only write Chodesh Menachem. You don't write Menachem Av. When it comes to a get, the Kavnoki brings from the Knesset Agdola that in Knesset Gdola on the actual Shulchan Aruch, he writes that it's kosher to write Menachem even l'chatchila, and in Seder HaGet, the Knesset Gdola writes that it's a suffix if it's kosher l'chatchila or only b'diavad. The Get Pashut, also another classical beer on the Shulchan Aruch, says that Shtaris you only write Menachem, and Get you only write of, and if you wrote Menachem alone in a Get, it's kosher. Side the Knesset Gdola and side the Get Pashut are Sfardim. The Aruch HaShulchan and Siman Kuf Chavav Sef Yutes says, Kavnoki does not bring the Aruch HaShulchan, but he brings the Knesset Gdola. And the Aruch HaShulchan says that therefore, if you just write Menachem in a get, it's kosher for Sfardim, and for Ashkenazim it's tzarich if it's kosher, because there's no mocker in the Ashkenazi Shepoiskim that just writing Menachem is kosher by a get. By Shtaris it's for sure kosher. The Nachlas Shiva in Siman Daled that we saw says only mentions of, not Menachem of. That means you write in the Ksuba only of. We in Lubavitch have a totally different minhag. We write Menachem of in the Ksuba. The reason for it is explained in a letter from the Rebbe, Rosh Chodesh Menachem of Tafshin Zayin. It in Igros Kedesh Chelik Beis, page Reishut Gimel. It's also in the Sichos Chelik Chavtes and Eisofis. The first Eisof and Chelik Chavtes, where the Rebbe opens the letter, finishes the letter by saying, I spoke in the Fabrengen and Shabbos and Vorchim of Tafshin Zayin, that the month is called Av. And that's how you write in a get, just of. And he brings a mocker from Kavnoki, you just write of. But when it comes to Ksuba and Birkas HaChodesh, the Lashon of the Rebbe is Aval B'Ksuba Birkas HaChodesh, I'm Menachem of. And the Rebbe explains why is that. Because when you look at in Zman HaGolus, the Yidden are like a woman who was divorced. And therefore, we have to see the love of the Eibishter as our Father, even when He punishes us. So that's the remez in the name of. And therefore, in a get, which is the Inyan of Gerushin, you only write of. We have to think of how the love of the Father, even when He hits his kid. But when we ask the Eibishter in Birkas HaChodesh, we want like it's in the Geula, there should be a Menachem of. We want revealed love. And therefore, in Birkas HaChodesh, you write Menachem of. And the Rebbe adds in parentheses, and therefore in the Ksuba also, which the whole purpose of the Ksuba is Shalei Kalabein of, to have the opposite of a get. Therefore in the Ksuba also, we're going to write Menachem of and not of. That's why the minhag in Lubavitch. No, some people call them the month of Rachman, but we're talking about the Rebbe says just of refers to of in the form of that you have to think of the love when the kid gets hit. Menachem of is Ava Begilui. That's why our minhag is obviously if you write just of it's kosher, but our minhag is to write Menachem of in a ksuba. Practically, I didn't see it in other places. The month of Cheshvan. Official name of Cheshvan is Mar Cheshvan, as one word. And now the minhag is Menachem of, because that's what the Rebbe writes in the letter. So I saw some that write still just of, and some of the Rabbanim write Menachem of. But the way I was taught is write Menachem of. Mar Cheshvan is one word. It's not Mar Cheshvan, a bitter Cheshvan. It's Mar Cheshvan. That's the name. The original name in Persian is Mar Cheshvan. There are some that made a mistake and they say you don't write Mar Cheshvan in the Ksuba because Mar means bitter, but it's not. It's the same. It's not like Menachem of with just two names. It's one name, Mar Cheshvan. And therefore, not only that, if you write in two names, in two words, Mar Cheshvan, the get pashut in Siman Kuf Chavav says Tzorich if the get is kosher, if you write Mar Cheshvan in two words. It has to be one word, that's the name of the month. Cheshvan is not the name of the month. Mar Cheshvan is not the name of the month. Mar Cheshvan is the name of the month. One word. That's Cheshvan. Adar. Adar, there is the whole discussion how to write what Adar. So if you have a regular year, not a Muberes, Adar is Adar. No Shaila. If you have a Shana Muberes, Say in the Kavnoki, in Siman Kufhei, in Say in Nachlas Shiva, well, three Seder Getri, Seder Aget, Siman Kufhei, in Nachlas Shiva. You see it in the first, in Adar Rishon, you write Adar Horishon. In Adar Sheni, you write Adar HaSheni. The Nachlas Shiva says that if you write Adar Stam on a year, on a Shana Muberes, so if it's Chodesh Adar Rishon, it's kosher. If it's Chodesh Adar Sheni, it's possible. The Aruch HaShulchan says that is the Achras Roiva Poiskim, even though the Rambam says that Stam Adar is Adar Sheni. However, if you look in the Kavnoki and Sefkot and Tazayin, on Siman Kufhei, he says, he brings from the Get Pashut that you have to be machmer if you just write Adar Stam. Why is that? And it's brought from the Knesset Agdela. The Knesset Agdela says that even though that in Choshen Mishpat and in Yeridei, the Mechaber writes that on Adar Rishon you could write Adar Stam. Here in Gittin, he does not give you that option. So therefore, you have to be machmer. In Birkas Hamayim, which is the biur on the Seder Aget, which is also, the Kavnoki brings all of this, he says that if you write Adar without writing Adar Horishin in the first Adar, it's possible even in Shas Chak. That's what the Kavnoki brings from the Maramri, from the Birkas Hamayim. I already told you the Aruch HaShulchan says that it's Reva Poiskim hold that it's fine. The Maya said don't make such mistakes. The only thing that the Birkas the Kavnoki Maharamri is Seder Aget. Birkas Hamayim, he's machmir. He says even b'shas chak it's possible Adar Stam, and if you write even for Adar Aleph. If you write Adar Rishon or Adar Sheni instead of Adar Horishon, Adar HaSheni, then it's kosher. Even the Birkas Hamayim says it's kosher. If you write Adar Horishon without a vav, then it's only kosher if the get was already given or it is a mokoim igun. Then you'll look for it. One of the differences between a ksuba and a get is by a ksuba you write l'chodesh, by a get you write l'yerach. L'chodesh you write choser vav, without a vav. We'll move to the days of the month. Gave the get, or it's a mokem igun. But you can't get another get, and the woman's going to be stuck without a get. The husband left town already. You can't get a new minui, whatever it is.
So if you give it, you have to do a new get?
No, you don't do a new get. Why are you giving a new get? If you gave it already, it's kosher. If you could get a new get, then if you... The husband's not there anymore. Or you can't get a new get. No, you didn't give it. It's written, and the sefer realizes a mistake, and you can't get a new get. The husband left, or whatever it is. Or it was sent from one country to another country, and only the guy who received it chapped on the mistake. The days of the month. We'll start with Rosh Chodesh. The reason for this shir is first of all because Menachem Av, the letter from the Rebbe about Menachem Av, and there's Rosh Chodesh. Seder Get Rishon, the Seder Aget, Ois Beis, after he tells you that we don't write a get on Chodesh Shir, but the minhag is ready to write a Chodesh Shir, says, try to avoid writing a get on Rosh Chodesh. Kavnoki over there right away tells you what's the reason why you shouldn't be writing a get on Rosh Chodesh. You have a suffix, how to write. Do you write be'echad l'chodesh, be'echad l'yerach, yeah? Or, this is about the first day, a second day Rosh Chodesh, Yom Aleph in the month. Or you write Yom Echad. Why in Torah it's written be'echad, in be'echad l'chodesh, in Chagai it's written as Yom Echad. That's one suffix. Second suffix is, do you write Beroish Chodesh Iyar Shehu Yom Shloishim L'Chodesh Nisan, or you write the other way around, ב-30 ימים לחודש ניסן שהוא ראש חודש אייר. Why is that? Because there's a shaila, since people don't use the name, by the time it's Rosh Chodesh, even if it's the first day of Rosh Chodesh, by Yom Shloshim, the first day of Rosh Chodesh, nobody says today is Lamed Nisan, today is Lamed Av. Say today's Rosh Chodesh. That means that mentioning the previous month is already, could become a shaila, maybe it's a mukdam.
It's not Aleph when it's only
When it's not Aleph Iyar, it's Lamed Nisan, which is Aleph the Rosh Chodesh. When it's Beis the Rosh Chodesh, or Bichlal Stam Rosh Chodesh, you have a shaila if it's right Be'echad or Yom Echad. If it's Beis the Rosh Chodesh, if it's Aleph the Rosh Chodesh, which is Shloshim Yom, is a shaila. If you put Shloshim Yom first, you put Rosh Chodesh first. So that's why the Kavnagi says we should try to avoid writing a get on Rosh Chodesh. But Poyel, you see the way it's written in Nachlas Shiva. Second, that the way it's done. No, but the first day he writes Yom Echad. That's how he writes. Bepoil, the way it's written today, usually you write Be'echad, not B'yom Echad. Huh? Right, yeah, it's better to write Yom Echad, but I get to write Yom Echad, yeah. So we also write Yom Echad. Some people write Be'echad. It's still kosher. Yom Echad. As far as I remember, it's Yom Echad, no? I don't know. I have to check my ksuba. It was written on Aleph Kislev. I have no idea.
Was it today's Rosh Chodesh that year?
Doesn't make a difference for Yom Echad. Be'echad in the month also. Be'echad l'chodesh. Yeah, that's what I remember also, yeah. When it comes to names of the month, all the dates are the numbers are Loshen Zachar. So you write Shnei Yamim, Shloisha Yamim, Arba Yamim, Chamisha Yamim, Shisha Yamim, Shiva Yamim, Shmeina Yamim, Tisha Yamim, Asara Yamim. All Loshen Zachar, and you all do Yamim. From 2 to 10 is Yamim. From 11, from Achad Asar until Lamed, you write Yom. You write Yom. You don't. It's all Lashon Yachid, but also Zachar, Achad Asar, Shneim Asar, etc. Not Achas Esrei, Shteim Esrei, etc. Shloisha, Shmoina, and Shishi are all Chaser. That means Shloisha is written Shin Lamed Shin Hey, Shmoina is written Shin Mem Nun Hey, Shishi is written Shin Yud. Shisha, yeah. Shisha, Shloisha, Shmoina, Shin Hey, I meant, yeah. If you write Mole, the Aruch HaShulchan says it's kosher. Why? Because you could tell what it is. Shmoina with a Vav is still kosher. You don't have to write a new get. Shisha with a Yud between the Shin and the first, between two Shins, you can still read it as Shisha. You can't read anything else. Shloisha with a Vav, you also read it as Shloisha. However, if you put two Yuds in Sheni, it becomes a problem because some people might read it as Shinei, something which is not the name of the day. That is months. Regarding years, all the years are written in Lashon Nekeva, not in Lashon Zachar. Now, in Yamim, you write the two main differences between Yamim and Shanim is Yamim are written Lashon Zachar, and you put the Mispar Katan before the Mispar Gadol, Tisha ve'Esrim. In Shanim, you write Lashon Nekeva, and it's the bigger number before the smaller number. Chamesh Alafim L'Shvam Meis U'Shmeinim U'Shleisha. Shmeinim U'Shalish. Shleisha is for the days of the month. Shalish. They're all in Lashon Nekeva. The only number which is no difference in Lashon Zachar and Lashon Nekeva is Shmoina. It's both written Shin Mem Nun Hey. However, there's a difference between them, the way you read them. Loshen nezachar is shmoino, loshen nekeva is shmoine. So there are those, if they're makpid on the way they read the ksuba or they read the get, they're going to read it by the days of the month. They're going to read it loshen zachar shmoino, and by the year they're going to read it loshen nekeva shmoine. Shmoinim, even Shmoinim, according to almost all the Paiskim, is written Chassid also. Shin Mem Nun Yud, just like Shmoina. Shmoineh is written Shin Mem Nun Hey without a Vav. Shmoinim, everybody except for the Aruch HaShulchan says you write Shmoinim without a Vav. The Aruch HaShulchan says in Kuf Chavches, Siman Kuf Chavches, that you write Shmoinim Malei. I didn't see anybody that Gittin today that are written with Shmoinim Malei. But you should just know about it. If you do see a ksuba with Shmoinim Malei, it's kosher. Some people say Chatchil you should write Shmoinim Malei. What? What? You could read the Shmeina. Shmoinim is what? You could. That's why the Aruch HaShulchan says it's a different word. That you could read it so different. You should write it with a vav. But we're not. The poil everybody sees. If it's in the number of the years, that it's a number. It's mashma clearly. So that's how the poil we write shmoinim without a vav, because it's chaser in Torah most of the time. It's chaser. The Aruch HaShulchan also points out that even though in Torah sometimes we see minyan cotton comes before, the smaller number comes before the bigger number in years, still, by years we still go bigger number before smaller number. When it comes to the place, Be'ir, Be'masa, whatever it is, or Poi, Ir, Poi, whatever it is, by a get, you would usually write Masa, which means a city. Either by the Ashkenazim, the Masa comes after the name of the city. By the Sephardim, Masa comes before the name of the city. And if it's a village, this is true. It's a Machzedek. You write Kfar. There's a Yishuv, or it's a place which is Samuch LeYishuv, Samuch LeIr, or Samuch LeMasa. But in the Ksuba, you only write the name of the city without the names of the rivers. By a get, you write the Simanim, which is the rivers. In America, you write the name of the city and the name of the state. You don't have to write the name of the country, even though some people do write the name of the country.
In COVID, there were people that were getting married like in the mountains or whatever.
You search on Google where you are. Sometimes it's different. You have to see next. If nobody knows where it is, then you have to put next to. You have to write. They have names. You have to find out what it is. If it's a village or it's a... Like Ksuba, you write... No, today you just write the name, Brooklyn, New York. You don't have to. By a get is different. It's supposed to be like that.
You should write a kfar. If it's a kfar, you should write a kfar.
Yeah.
Or the yishuv.
The Yishuv, Kfar, yeah. Today we always write Ir. If it's officially a Ir, we write Ir. It becomes a shaylas. Now you have to be very careful because Lamashal, if you go and there's a building in Monsey, and now Monsey touches Spring Valley, two cities. This Kviyas Shemus for a get only in Monsey, not in Spring Valley. They write Gittin in that building, it's Machain Leira. They only write on one side of the building, which is on Monsey land, and not in the Spring Valley side. Because otherwise there's no Kviyas Malka in Spring Valley. You have to be very careful. A lot of times you have the whole in one place, you have the Ksubas signed somewhere else. You have to be careful what you're signing or where you're signing and make sure you find out exactly what it is.
When you go after where the signing happens.
Where the signing happens. It's a shtar. Also, there's places where you could even see that there's a hole in a city and there's a parking lot which is not in the city. The chuppah might be in a different city on paper. You just have to do research properly, look exactly where the place is. And you can't rely on just the addresses that are, or the invitation, the addresses which are written on the directions, because a lot of times they'll just write a general name for the place instead of writing.
What do you mean no Kriya Shevis is being valid?
There's no Kriyas Mokim Get. Today we don't make new places.
Queens
Huh?
and Brooklyn,
What?
you make a difference between Queens and Brooklyn.
What do you mean? Queens is Queens, Brooklyn is Brooklyn.
Yeah, they write on the.
You write Queens, sure. Get in Brooklyn is written Brooklyn, Masad Yaswal, Kefion, Van Haris, River, Main Haris. In Queens, it's Queens, Masad Yaswal, Haris, River, Main Haris. Al Kefion, Van Haris, River, Main Haris. Both Queens and Brooklyn sit on the East River and on other rivers and on the sea. So that's how it's written in Brooklyn and Queens. Manhattan's written differently.
You mentioned that on the ksuba you write before the name of the city, you write the word ear.
No, Poi. No, you just Poi Brooklyn. Brooklyn, New York, yeah.
How's Manhattan?
Huh?
How's Manhattan?
What?
How's Manhattan?
New York. That's the official name of it. New York. Yeah, New York, New York. There are those that write, like I said, the Knachal Shiva say you write Ir, Masa, whatever. We write Poi, and that's it. Kan. Huh? And the law, it says, the Minyan Shem Moinim Kan, Brooklyn, whatever it is. Or the Minyan Shem Moinim, whichever it's kosher both ways. Aside for the place and the date, you also have to do research and other things when it comes to a get. You have to see if the Baal is a Ashkenazi or a Sephardi. The ksuba for the Ashkenazim and for the Sephardim is different. The ksuba, there's big differences in the ksuba between the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi. Within Ashkenazim, different communities have different diukim in the ksuba. Within the Sephardim, different communities have different diukim in the ksuba. You have to make sure you know what you're getting into. Somebody who is fully part of a community, even if bloodline, he is a Sephardi, he's part of a Lubavitcher community, he's a Lubavitcher, then you're going to treat him like a Ashkenazi, because we follow the psakim of Rabbi Seinu Sienu, the way Tzemach Tzedek Paskins, etc., which is essentially like an Ashkenazi. That's how a get would be written for them also. If a person was born an Ashkenazi but grew up all his life in a Sephardic place and follows all the minhagim of a Sephardi, he will write everything like a Sephardi. There's a question if you have to do Ataras Nedarim if you want to change, or if you want to change when you're an adult. You might have to do Ataras Nedarim. If you always grew up one way, then you follow those minhagim.
What if he comes from his parents, grandparents, not fluent, but the older ladies were, let's say, starting for Ashkenazi, and now you get tired of this kid.
So you try to get him back to his roots.
Yeah.
There's differences in the ksuba. You have to find out what the situation of the girl is. Is she a besula? Is she a beula? Is she a beula satzmai? Is she a beula sacherim? Is she a grusha? Is she almana? Is she a giyores? Is she a grusha? Used to be an almana? Now, all these things will make a difference how you write in the ksuba. The only time you write moihar is by a besula. Moihar besulaichi kesef zuzi masan dechazi lechi mideraisa. Deraisa only besula has only a, she has moihar and she has 200, and you also write mebei avua usually. If it's an almana, it's kesef armelusaichi, it's meyazuzi, it's miderabanon. By a grushi, it's kesef matrechusaichi, also meya, also only miderabanon. And you're going to write by a besul, you write besulta, by a almana you write armalta, by a grusha you write matrachte, by a grusha which was the first time she was a grusha, then she married somebody else, she became an almana. It will still be written. It will be written armalta dehaves matrachtem and kadmas dena. The reason for it is because if a woman is a almana and all she has is a ksubas almana, but really she was a grusha beforehand, and then her third husband, because she was a grusha, then almana. She was a grusha and almana, and then she becomes an almana again. Kohen might marry her because the Rav is going to look at the ksuba and see only Armalta. But really she's asura l'kohen because she's a grusha, so you make sure to write grusha, matrachte, Armalte, almana that used to be a matrachte. By a book,
With these words, like, is it kedai maybe to actually write the word grusha instead of?
No, the whole ksuba is written in Aramaic, so
The Rav is not going to.
the Rav knows exactly what Armalte is and what matrachte is. If not, you shouldn't be getting involved in Kiddushin.
Some guy.
They're not allowed to do Kiddushin. A be'ula, which is not a be'ula satzma, you write be'ulta, you write itza, and she's only gets zuzi meya, the chazi l'chi, you don't write midrabanan or midaraisa. By a be'ula, if it's be'ula satzma, Moshe paskins that you could write besula and the chazi l'chi and everything the regular way, as long as she is, the husband, chasen, is masking, because it's a shtar, he's masking that it should be to commit himself to like a be'ula, then it's fine. By giyoris,
All three places, correct?
no, only a be'ula satzmai.
No, I'm saying, but the all three places you mentioned.
Yeah, besulta, yeah. Write like a regular besula, ksuba, yeah. A giyoris, you write kesef giyurasaichi. I don't know what depends. I don't know. If you need to, you write it. And you write giyurta da. Now I'm going to move on a little bit to the topic of names. In Kitzur Nachlashiva Siman Tesvav, he starts by saying that you have to be medaktik, like I mentioned before, everything that you write in the ksuba, you have to do also in the get. He brings it from the actual Nachlashiva, because if there be a suffix at the time of the get, they're going to look at the ksuba, and therefore it would have made sense to write Hamechuna and the Miskari, and the Tzarichin, why they don't write it. Right? Now, then he gives a list of klolim in Siman Tesvav, a general klolim of shemes, which are all brought from Ahlei Shem. What's a Shem Ikar? What's a Shem Tafel? A Shem Ikar is the one that he goes up to the Torah and he signs in it. A Shem Tafel is the one that people usually call him by. By a get, it would be written the Shem Ikar, the Miskri or Hamechune on the Shem Tafel. And by a Ksuba, again, since we don't have the Miskri and Hamechune, you're just going to write the Shem Ikar. If you only know what Aliyah Torah name is, that's the Shem Ikar. If you don't know what Aliyah Torah is, or he's not Aliyah to the Torah, then the name that he writes is not the name that he signs. The name that he is the name that people call him becomes his Shem Ikari. And that's very important by Ksuba. If somebody comes and claims he has a Jewish name that was given to him, never use the name. Or especially if it's a name that was given later, sometimes people feel that it's exciting to give somebody a Jewish name for the Ksuba and it was never used before, it'll never be used afterwards. It could create a shayla in the Ksuba. It's better to write the Goyish name. That's the Shem Ikar.
You said before that we don't write the Miskari and...
By Ksuba? No.
So we never, okay.
Never do the Miskari and
Signing checks, when you name the signing check, is that considered the Shem that he's started?
It's a scribble, unless you have a specific signature, yeah.
You have a signature.
You have a signature, that's chasima, yeah.
Your passport.
If that's how you sign, then the official chasima.
You'll have your Shem, is one.
Right, so that's different. If you're not sure which one is the one, go bust to the Rav.
No, we know both, but they're Sasri Adat. Or
Then you go after the Rav. But if you have a Shem Kodesh, and that is a Shem Aliyah Torah, is a Shem Kodesh, yeah, and we know it, and there's a Shem Chsima, which is Shem Laz, then the get you're going to write the Miskari, the Shem Kodesh, the Miskar Hamachune to the Shem Laz, and again, the Ksuba you only write the Shem Kodesh.
What happens when they're both Shem Kodesh? Like it's a longer name, so legally.
You write the full name, whatever he's out Torah, and that's the main thing.
How many times do you deal with that?
3 times, a few times, once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, depending.
The normal.
It has to be called 3 times.
The normal. I think can we do now on the Torah that day or something?
No. That only works for, no, you have to be Kaveh Hashem for 30 days. we're not discussing that now. Only for a choyle, the tzemach tzedek is mekel, is different, but everything else is not. Shem choyle, I'm not going to get into now, yeah?
Is there a termination when they get the name of the matzeva?
I don't know about matzevas. To use it as a mokir? I don't know. When you don't know the father's name, then you just write, it's kosher if you just write his name. Some people will write the mother's name, some people will do a grandfather's name, because maybe it depends on it depends on the situation. You write Ben Ploini, you don't write Bar Ploini, yeah?
Rashalom said that you do with the last name.
We never did last names. So this, huh?
He's telling you to write it also. It's his chiddush.
It's not only him. Fine. In Kitzur Nachal Shiva, it tells you that by a ger you could write either Ben Avram Avinu or Ploini Hager Ben Avram. Today, by a get, we only write Ben Avram Avinu or Hager / Hagioiris without Bas Avram, Ben Avram Avinu. The reason is there's a reason for it. If a person is a ger is frum, you know the gerus, or you know the gerus was 100% kosher, then you write Ben Avram Avinu. If it's a shaila on the gerus, you write Hager, Hagioiris. That's how it became accepted within the Batei Din for many years already, and that's how when you see a Teudas Gerushin and you see Hager, Hagioiris instead of Ben Avram Avinu, you know what it's about. There's a shaila on the gerus.
That means that they try to get remarried, the person's going to do a proper bid or
the point of it is that they should, whoever's dealing with it should know, we did a get because it's a suffix on their gerus, still it's a suffix, we still do a get anyways outside a suffix. But we write Hager, Hagioiris because we're not confident 100% that they're talking about Ben Avram Avinu.
You write ger ben hager?
No. You write the name, Yosef, Hager, instead of Yosef Ben Avram Avinu. Names in Lashon Kodesh, which could be written Molei or Chaser, you write, the Kitzur Nachal Shiva says you write the way you sign. Bepoil today, we try to write the way it's written in Sifrei Gittin. You search in Sifrei Gittin, those are usually based on what's the majority ways of spelling it, unless the person specifically is makpid on writing his name in a specific way. That is regarding the names. Now, the other thing that we started learning is, I'm going to go through in Kavnaki, there's different points. One of the klalim that we discussed in Kavnaki, one of the ones that's on the list is klal lamed daled, which is the dinim of shem shenishtaka. A lot of people got confused in it, so I'm going to give you a summary of each one of these things of the Kavnaki, and summaries on video, so then afterwards you could review it again. The Klal Lamed Daled of Kavnaki has 32 seifim. It doesn't actually have seifim the way, as opposed to the other places in Kavnaki where he writes maskanes in the klalim in the back of Kavnaki, which is where this comes from, Klal Lamed Daled. It's quotes from different Sfarim. And the idea is from every quote there's something which you learn out of it. So, I'm going to go through some of them, at least we'll start with them. Aleph. If a person has two names, even if one name is because of Chayli, was given because of Machmas Chayli, which we're not discussing now, the whole Machmas Chayli situation, and one of the names is no longer being used, even if that name is the Jewish name, right? Is a Jewish name. That means he has two names. Whether he got two names at the bris, or he got two names because they were sick and they added a second name, or three names, and one name is completely eliminated, even if that's the name that was added because of Chayli, and he's Oila La Torah, and he signs only with the name which is not Nishtaka. The only name you're going to write in the get is the name which is not Nishtaka. You don't write the name which is completely eliminated. If a person has one name and they changed it, they started using a different name. The name from birth, this is Ois Beis. The name from birth was Malia, and name now is Malia, and she used to be called Malka from birth, and she does not get called Malka by anybody. It's considered Nishtaka, and you don't write it. And over here he brings a machlekes what Nishtaka means. The Shas Tshuva's Pri Tvua holds that Nishtaka means that it's not known to the majority of people as his name, not that it's completely eliminated, and even in such a case where it's not completely eliminated, if you write that name in the get is possible, except for specific scenarios where it's kosher b'diavad. But the Pesach Tshuva and the Beis Shmuel hold that Nishtaka means that it's completely eliminated, and only if it's completely never ever used anymore, that's when, if you write it in the get becomes the get becomes possible, even b'diavad. But if it's not completely eliminated, it's still used sporadically, and that's the original name. The get is kosher. In Ois Gimel, if a person is called Avraham Tzvi and nobody calls him anymore, he was given at birth Avraham Tzvi, nobody calls him Avraham Tzvi anymore, and everybody calls him Avraham Hersh, you don't have to write Tzvi in a get. If you write it, it's possible. By Aliyah is called Avraham Hersh, not Avraham Tzvi. So Tzvi was completely Nishtaka. Therefore, even though Hirsch is a translation of Tzvi, everybody calls him Avraham Hersh, that's how he's Oilel Torah. He's still, if that's going to be written in the get, it's considered Nishtaka. And therefore the get is possible, even though people remember that that's his name at birth. People remember that his name is Avram Tzvi, but nobody calls him Avram Tzvi. Even the Gabbai calls him Avram Hersh ben whatever, Yamoid Avram Hersh ben whatever.
What's that Rosh Hashanah's second class line over there? Base take cup.
Base what?
The second class line of Gimel.
I'm not looking at the things. Show me afterwards, I'll show you what it is. Daled. If a name of a person is completely nishtaka, does not oil Torah, people don't call him, even though the name is written in the ksuba, you don't have to write it in the get. You don't write it in the get. That's what it says in the Kut Ishemus. But the Divrei Emes says that if it's written in the ksuba, you should write it even if it's not being used, because you have to try and have the get as similar to the ksuba as possible. And this is, as a side note, this is one of the reasons why it's very important that the guy who writes the ksuba knows what he's doing. Because if you're going to put a name, that you gave a guy a name in Shul, Shabbos Ufruf, and that was the first and last time that he used the name, and you put it into the ksuba, and then come a time for the get, and you're going to ask him, do you have a Jewish name? Yes, I have a Jewish name. The name is written in the ksuba, it becomes a whole discussion. Could you write it or not? And that's going to become a problem.
Why can't you write the Messiah? Just write the Messiah.
What do you mean write the Messiah? On what? You can't put the Jewish name after Goyish name. And it's not the Messiah. Messiah means that he's being called. He's not being called that name. Well, how could you have that name? He never used the name. And Ois, hey, if the Shem Arisa is completely eliminated, it's no longer being used at all, and now the person is called by a different name, and in the get they only wrote the Shem Arisa, or they wrote the Shem Arisa, the get is possible because Shinui Hashem. And Ois Vav is discussing a specific scenario where a woman's name was Naomi from birth, and now she's called Naama. And since it's only a change in the kudus, Naamo, Naami, then you have to write two gittin. One b'shem Naama, b'poil we don't, b'poil today we only write one get by the name that's being used. Ois Zayin, if a person's name when he was born is Aryeh, and that's how it's written in the Tnoim and in the Ksuba, and he's Oilo L'Torah, and he signs Yehuda Leib rather than Aryeh Leib, over there you write Yehuda HaMechuna Leib, because that's in the days when they used to write a Mechuna between the Jewish name and translation name, which we don't do today anymore. Today we write Yehuda Leib, not Aryeh Leib. This is Ois.
Like new didn't these, like a lot of these seem repetitive. The didn't already said earlier.
He repeats them now. The Yudches, the Zayin, is half a story, and Yudches is a continuation to Sif Zayin. So Yudches, he says, he brings in the Pischei Tshuva, that this is only when somebody used to be called Aryeh Leib, and now he's only Oila Sefer and Chaysim Yehuda Leib, we write Yehuda Leib, is only if people only call him by the nickname by Leib. But if he's still called by the first name, it's not considered like it's Nishtaka completely. Ches, he brings in the Beis Shmuel that if you have a Shem Ma'arisa which is completely Nishtaka, I mean it's not used at all, but now there's a very similar name that's being used, just a change of one letter, one by the Havara, not a Shem of Nikud, not that it's Na'ama Na'ami, but it's a change from a Ches to a Hey, for example. Then, and you wrote the Shem Ma'arisa, the name of birth, and not the name that was good, not the name that's being used now. It's only kosher in Mokim Igun. It's not kosher on a regular basis.
Why did Na'ama just
Because that's what it is. It's being pronounced. Only one difference, even though it's. I know the spelling is different, but the presentation is the same. It could be like. There's no real difference in the pronunciation. It's only the Hey is silent and the Yud is silent. It's only the Nikud of the Mem. You're only pronouncing with your mouth 3 letters. Nun, Ayin, Mem. The Yud and the Hey is instead of the Patach or the Kamatz or the Yud at the end of the word. So it's only a Shinui Nikud.
This case of Nechama, which is now Nehama, I guess.
Yeah, Nehama.
Nehama. Like what if an accent changes the way the name sounds? Let's say.
There's a whole discussion. That's a Jewish.
Russian accent.
So there's not a Jewish name with a Russian accent. You're talking about the Hersh and Gersh. There's a discussion. There's a discussion about that in Get in the Get. If you write it, if it's a Jewish name, you write the way it's written. If it's not,
the whole idea that they went.
Yeah, it's because the name.
We know that the accent. We know that they're trying to say one name, just the accent makes it sound a little bit different.
But this is a name which is Torah. They're calling the person based on the Torah, based on the Yiddish name, Tzvi Hirsch or Hersh. You're not going to write Gersh. You're not Hersh. Now the saying this Ois Tes also discusses a change in a Nekuda. Huh?
He says if it's just a change of the accent, then I think it's a separate thing. If it's known that you change the Hey and the Ches, he says it can be marked. And also, unless you think it's the same.
That's how I understood it. Yeah. Now, if a person was called Avshalom that's in Sif Tes, is called in Ois Tes, was called Avshalom at the Bris, and that's how his other relatives which are named are called the same way, but everybody calls him Avishalom. You write Avishalom the Miskeri of Shalom.
He's not called.
He's called Avshalom. The reason, but that's his name from birth, and the reason why is because it's not Nishtaka. That's what he brings over here. He brings from the Shemes Anoshim. It's not. We don't say it's Nishtaka because there's no Shinui. There's no Shinui. There's no Shinui Ois. It's only Shinui of Nikud, as opposed to Naam or Naami, where there's a Shinui in Nikud, but there's also a Shinui in the end. By the end of the letter. Avi, you write Avishalom. Avshalom, yeah. He says it's not considered a change. He says even though we saw before that Naam is considered a change because it's the end of the word, Masha'inkin here, it's not the end of the word, it's the middle of the word, so we don't say it's considered a change. In Ois Yud, someone was called Zakai at the bris, and that's how other people in the family are also called, named after the same grandfather. And everybody calls him Zakei. Then he says Tzorichiyun if you write Zakai or Zakei. It's a shayla if you have, because since it might be just a shinui, and it could be it's a shinui that made the first name to be completely nishtaka, and you only have to write a new name. Huh? The aleph is missing, and the nikud is different.
You have the name Zaki.
Huh?
The name Zaki.
Zaki is a Kitzur Hashem for sure from something else. Nobody's called Zaki at a bris. His name is Zaki from a bris? Okay, he's good. Okay,
that's the change at the end of the name.
That's a change in the name. That's Tzorichiyun if it's considered a change of a name or if it's a Kitzur Hashem. And if it's only a Kitzur Hashem, it doesn't mean that the original name was nishtaka completely. And therefore, Lavdavka, you have to write. It's Shemus Anoshim Ois Zayin. You see where it says Shin Aleph Aleph, it's Shemus Anoshim Ois Aleph, Shin Aleph Zayin, and Shemus Anoshim Ois Zayin, Ois Zayin, etc. That's just a Yud. And I'm going to skip to Ois Yud Gimel. People make a mistake and they call him a name similar to his birth name. And the example that's brought is Gershon, Gershom. Yeah, and you don't, and then that's because people call him differently than what he was given at the bris. But you only write. You write the name that is a real name. Why? Because if people call him, if his name from birth is Gershon, and people call him Gershom, or his name from birth, more common will be Gershom, and people call him Gershon because that's the common one, for him it's not his name, never was his name. If you're going to write Gershon, it's not his name. His name is Gershom, and it's not even a kinui, it's a tos. So therefore you have to write just the shame that he was born with. And if you're going to write Gershon, in Shemus Anoshim, he stated, the Maramri stayed in Tzorichiyun, because at the end, maybe it is kosher, even though Chatchil says it's possible, because ultimately he's still being called by that name, even though it is a mistake. But you do have to look into it. A lot of times when you have this question, it comes up not so much in Gershom, a lot of times it could be with Eliezer and Elazar. If it's only a nickname, then you don't know what people call him, and you have to find out what his name actually is. In Ois Yudalad, if there is letters which get mixed up in the name, that people a lot of times mix up a letter before another letter, it's not considered, it's not the mile of Lamoyri, you just write the way that it's written properly. If people call him a totally different name, and he's not interested, his name is Reuven, and people call him Shimon, so if everybody calls him only with the other name and not with the name from birth, it's completely nishtaka. But if it's not nishtaka legamri, the original name, then you write it with the miskari. For girl, you tesvav, and I think with a few more, and then we'll conclude, and then we'll continue a different time. Next year, if her name was middle when she was born, and that's when she lived in the place where she was born, she was called middle, and now she's called mirush, and that's how everybody calls her. And that's how her husband knows her, by mirush, and they wrote middle in a get. It's kosher, but the eved only if people know her as middle in the city where she was born. But if nobody knows her by the name of middle in any place, the get is possible because it's considered mamash nishtaka. Because today everybody calls her as a mirush. Tezayin, if she's called Emmanuel, if he was born with the name Emmanuel, and everybody calls him Emmanuel, which is a kitzur of Emmanuel, you write, in a get you would write Emmanuel the Miskri Emmanuel, even though it's a kitzur. That's what Ezras Nashim says. It brings from Ezras Nashim the name that you just write. You'd write Emmanuel even though it's a kitzur. Usually you don't write kitzur. Emmanuel, yeah. Yud Zayin. If a person has a nickname, which is not a specific nickname to his name, it's a nickname to his status. It brings an example for the name Gilidi that's given to rich people. So you'd write the name that he's born with, Hamechune Gilidi, even though most people call him Gilidi. Why? Because everybody knows that this is a nickname that he has, rather than, even though everybody calls him Gilidi, it's not a change of his name. It's a nickname to him. Right? Hamechune Gilidi, it's Hashem Esanoshim. If you look in the Hashlama of Kavnaki, he says over there, in the Hashlama to this ois, in the Hashlama Sasdorim, he brings in the name of the Shasu Hashem Aryeh, that you could write either Hamechune, other Hamechune, or the Miskri, and if you only wrote the Kinui Gilidi, it's kosher b'diavad. Interestingly, it brings an Olei Shem. If a woman has a name, it's a nickname, but it's not a nickname of a name, it's a nickname and that you saw already in I think it's in the Kiznach HaShiva also, it's like Al Tebab or something like that. And you don't know what the name from birth is, then the Olei Shem says, you just write Ant Intercede, the Miskaria, the name. Rather than you don't put the name from birth. That is, I'm going to stop here. I already read you Sif Yutches, because Sif Yutes starts the whole discussion, discusses about Shem Echad, one name in Malkim Ksiva, one name in Malkim Nesina. We will be mamshich with the discussions from the Kavnaki in the next year, Mitzvah Hashem.